we had spoken about the word Vayikra, the Aleph is written small. So we mentioned the Balaturim, based on the Midrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu originally wanted the word should be Vayikar, meaning it was just coincidental from the word Mikre. It was unrelated to his worthiness, but rather, in passing, somehow he was lucky that he was able to have this level of communication. And this was an indication of his humility. The Hashem says, no, but you can't. We have to establish what our relationship is. But Moshe Rabbeinu said, but I don't want it to be obvious who I am. So Hashem says, we'll make a compromise. The Aleph will be written, but it'll be written smaller. That's what we discussed yesterday. Over here, the Kli Yakar says something beautiful. Every prophet that prophesizes, if you have a Kli Yakar, he prophesies based on his own level of worthiness. And that's what we find prophets at various levels. Even though all prophets prophesize in the sleep state, but no two prophets prophesize at the same level. It's based on who they are in terms of their dimension of spirituality. The more advanced they are, the prophecy is a greater level of prophecy. Lesser, it's a lesser level of prophecy. Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Torah clearly differentiates openly, what was the difference in his prophecy and all other prophets? It was ponim el ponim. Meaning, first, it was a level of clarity. No prophet was the equivalent of that, and it was in the wake state. It was not in the sleep state. Okay? God openly spoke to him in the presence of the Jewish people. Aser Sadibros, the whole Torah in its entirety. So he wants to explain that in terms of his being worthy to be a prophet, that was based on his own level of accomplishment. But beyond that he was the conduit for the Torah to be transmitted to Jewish people, that was beyond. That was like a gift given to him, that because he had such a level of worthiness, God chose him to elevate him to a level which was unrelated to his own development. It's only because he developed to that point, he merited this gift, that he was given this new dimension of prophecy, that he was chosen to be the conduit to transmit the Torah to the Jewish people. So he explains it this way. He says, where do we find this? We find that when the Jews did the Egel, God says, Lech reid, ki shiches amcha, go down, because your people have become corrupted. So Rashi over there explains, what's raid? You must go down from your level of prophecy, because your only worthiness to prophesy at this level is because you represent the Jewish people. That's what you were given, this extra dimension of prophecy. But now that they've sinned, they're no longer worthy, so you're no longer worthy of this additional level of prophecy. Therefore, go down, because your people have become corrupted. So the additional level of prophecy which Moshe merited to have was in the merit of the Jewish people. So if they were no longer worthy, that additional level was taken from him, and therefore we only find that after he had supplicated Hashem for forgiveness, and Hashem forgave him, then he was restored to that other level, and that's when he went back, and that's when the Luchas Shnios, the second set of tablets, were given, because then again, because Klal Yisrael were worthy, because they were forgiven, therefore he ascended back to the original level of prophecy. This is how the Kli Yakar explains it. So he explains it this way. The Chazal tells it says, Lokom Novi B'Yisrael K'Moshe. There was no prophet among all prophets, Jewish prophets, that were as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. But the inference is, but among the nations of the world, there was a prophet as great as Moshe. And who was that? It was Bilam. So he asks, what do you mean he was as great as Moshe? And we asked it many times. Bilam was a man who was involved in bestiality, he was involved in witchcraft. So how could he, to any degree, and also he was a person who denied that God was aware of everything. He believed he could actually mislead God. If he was as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, how's it possible that to any degree we could equate him to Moshe Rabbeinu? So he explains it as this, and also Rashi cites Chazal by Bilam. It says Vayikor. It was Mikre. What is Mikra? Mikra means it was only coincidentally. meaning it's unrelated to your worthiness, but rather it's like a gift. A person comes upon a gift, comes upon a find. So which means every prophet's level of prophecy is based upon his own innate spiritual status, and therefore he comes upon that level of understanding, of communication. Moshe Rabbeinu, although he was Vayikra because he was worthy, but Vayikra is alluding to the additional gift that he was given, that's Mikra. That's unrelated to what he developed himself that was given to him as a gift. Identically, Bilam, his level of prophecy had nothing to do with him. In terms of his own worthiness, he had no worthiness. So Bilam's prophecy was totally Mikra. He came upon it because he was chosen by God. He should be the prophets of the nations, but his level of prophecy was based on who he's representing. Just as Klal Yisrael, the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu merited the extra gift of prophecy was on behalf of the Jewish people. That's why he was endowed with this additional level to give, that he should be the conduit for the Torah. Identically, Bilam was given this gift because he represents the nations of the world, but it can't be more than they're worthy themselves. And because the nations of the world only have barely any worthiness, therefore he was given the gift. So Bilam isn't totally Vayikor. It's all Mikra. Moshe, in his reality, was Vayikro. But to allude to the additional level of prophecy, that's Vayikor. Because that's unrelated to what he developed himself. That's the additional gift that he was given. That's how he wants to explain, because it's never a question that they're equal. Moshe and Bilam are not equal. They're only equal in terms of additional level of prophecy that they were given because of who they were representing. Therefore, that's Vayikor. So the Aleph is small to indicate who he is. Moshe Rabbeinu is a prophet worthy in terms of himself. But the additional level of prophecy that he merited that's unrelated to himself, that was only because he was representing the Jewish people. Bilam, he was totally that. He was unworthy, but only because he had to represent the nations of the world. Therefore, he's given this as a total gift to be able to receive some level of communication to represent the nations of the world. That's the first explanation of the Kli Yoker. That's the Aleph being small. In regard to Moshe Rabbeinu, he was a prophet, but in addition, Vayikor means that additional level of prophecy. Then he goes to say he quotes a Midrash, a very famous Midrash. The Midrash tells us that when you start teaching children, where do you begin teaching children? Chumash, from the beginning of Parshas Vayikra, the portion of Korbanos, sacrifices. Why? Because it says in Parshas Pinchos, Kvosim b'nei shono. When you bring sacrifices, kvosim. The word kevis means a sheep. But we know in Hebrew, the sin and the samach are interchangeable. Kibus or lechabes means to what? Means to launder, to cleanse. So the Midrash says that through the kvosim, through the sheep we bring as korbanos, we cleanse ourselves of sin. And a person is restored to like a newborn child. Like a newborn child. That's the degree of kapara, of atonement, which the korban, the kvosim bring about. So therefore, the Midrash says, therefore, as a result of that, where do you start teaching children? Parshas Korbanos, because just as the korban restores the person like to a young child, therefore we see that Korbanos has relevance to the status of a person as if he never sinned. That's why children are taught the beginning of the teachings of Chumash. They begin in Parshas Vayikra. They just read the few psukim or the first chapter, and then they go back to Bereshis, the beginning of Bereshis. Then he says in Hebrew, the word, and this is what Al alluded to yesterday, Aleph means to teach or to study. He quotes a pasuk in Eov. Eov says, "Alpha chokhmah, I will teach you wisdom." Alpha. So Aleph means to teach. So he says that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu merited to be the one to receive the Torah, because it says, one's only able to retain Torah, a person will minimize himself if he has an exceptional level of humility. He's maktin. So therefore, the Aleph in the Vayikra is alluding, why did Moshe merit to have that special level of relationship with Hashem, Vayikra el Moshe? Because the Aleph is small. He merited to study at that special level was because he minimized himself. To what degree did he minimize himself? That there was no trace of himself. So that's the Aleph. It's going with different. Vayikra, why? And it's very good because Rashi cites the Chazal. We find 13 times it says a love, that it was only to him, not to anyone else. To elucidate that whenever it says Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, doesn't mean to two of them equally, but rather to Moshe to give it over to Aaron. But why did he merit this? Vayikra, the Aleph. It all lies, the answer lies in that small Aleph. That because he minimized himself, and there was no one ever as humble as Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore he merited to be the only one to receive that direct transmission, and it was only to give over to Aaron, although it seems they were equal, but not in regard to this.